Good morning, all. Hello there. Hope you're all doing well. We are back. We are live today on Tuesday, the 22nd of April. Yes, it's April still. Marvellous. Love that for us. What are we doing today? Today, we are going to be doing a bit of a cube archetype breakdown. This is quite a cool one. It's one we've been talking about quite a bit on the Powerful Nothing podcast. If you're unaware, me and my co-host James do a bi-weekly cube podcast. One of the archetypes that we've been talking about quite a bit recently, just because there's a bunch of cards for it from Tarkir, is the kind of Insidious Roots S archetype. Insidious Roots is kind of the signature card of the archetype. So what I thought today is we'd actually kind of talk about the archetype as a whole, and also kind of like, we'll do the Moxfield thing of like, I'll actually make a package for it so you can kind of, if you want to add it to your own cube, you're able to. Because this is a very cool archetype, and it's got a bunch of new cards from it recently. And it looks to be kind of the way they are sort of going with Golgari. I'll read Insidious Roots first of all, and then we'll kind of jump into it. So Insidious Roots is a black and a green for an enchantment that says creature tokens you control have tap, add 1 mana of any colour, and whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 0/1 green plant creature token, then put a +1 counter on each plant you control. So this has kind of become the signposty type card for this archetype, but they're just printing more and more things that reward you when cards or creatures or lands, stuff like that, leave your graveyard. Previously, these graveyard decks would just reward you for like the number of things in your graveyard, or the number of creatures in your graveyard, or the number of instant or sorceries in your graveyard. This is now rewarding you for like doing the engine piece. Like self-mill decks often had cards with like dredge on them, or would like get cards back from their graveyard once you've like basically you would fill up your graveyard and then it'd be a resource, and you'd either have spells that reward you for its size, or you'd be getting stuff back from it, kind of like making it like an extension of your hand. This is rewarding you when you are getting things back from your graveyard when you're actually playing Magic with your big graveyard. So it's been very cool. It's been an archetype that me and my play group have enjoyed. It's now in multiple cubes in our play group. Yesterday we drafted Fire Truck Moto's Do Nothing, Blue Nothing cube, and this is kind of like one of the archetypes in that. And I was very lucky to beat James, who was playing this archetype. I saw him have some very scary games with it. Insidious Roots is in my regular Unpowered Vintage cube, and it's also a big archetype in my Treat Yourself cube. Links to all of those will be down in the description below if they're not already after the episode. So what we're doing today is kind of just giving a bit of a breakdown of the archetype and kind of giving you the bits if you wanted to include it in your own cube, because it has been really fun. It is a nice little twist on Golgari. It's fun. It's nicely powerful. So in terms of power level it can go into, this isn't like, we're not talking vintage, unfortunately. At the moment, I mean, if they keep printing bits for it, then maybe. But at the end of the day, Insidious Roots is a 2/0. It's a 2-man enchantment that does nothing by itself. That does not scream vintage cube if you think about that. But in any kind of cube lower than that, so any kind of more budget environment or any slower environment, like I was thinking like modern or pioneer power level cubes, this is a really cool archetype. Also, a bunch of the pieces are peasant, or like commons and uncommons. So we're going to be talking about a bunch of cards today. You could build this in your peasant cube by just including the commons and uncommons that we mentioned. Some of the most powerful engine cards and most powerful payoffs are commons and uncommons, which is very cool. But it's basically any kind of cube where you are looking to accrue value, or like do a thing, or like have mid-rangey type of games. Like the reason why this doesn't get into vintage, power level wise, you are doing something very powerful with this. It's just a little bit slow compared to what the rest of vintage cube is doing. With this kind of deck, you're looking to spend the early games kind of like slow, like playing like a Satyr Wayfinder or a Stitcher Supplier, filling up your graveyard, that kind of thing, and then you play an Insidious Roots, and then you kind of slowly accrue value. That is not vintage cube. If that kind of sounds like something that in a cube you have, or a cube you know, that where it kind of like the play pattern is kind of like turn 1 or 2, do a bit of fixing, do a bit of ramp, mill a little bit, and then kind of on turn 3 and 4 you start kind of like having some more impactful turns, and you kind of winning on turn like 6 to 10. This is more kind of the power level where we're talking, which will be a larger portion of cubes than kind of like people think. Anything a bit slower will love this archetype. Right, what do we need to do? So Insidious Roots is kind of the signpost card. What we're going to do is we are going to do our little breakdown thing here. So this will be the main cards. So we'll talk about all the individual cards on the left here, and then on the right here we will drag and drop them over and tag them up to kind of give you like a breakdown. And then this will also be in the description below after the episode if it's not already. So you can take this, add it to your cube. We will try and do a Cube Cobra package as well. We're going to be talking about like all the cards for Cube. As with cubes are different sizes. We're going to talk about all of them. We'll kind of give a summary at the end of kind of how many I think you need to add of each. But like effectively, we'll give all the options so you can pick the ones that you want. So if you are doing a peasant version, you have options. If you're doing a slightly more high powered level version, you have options. You can pick the ones that you like. You don't need to run every single one of these because we are actually at the point now where we have some choice, which is very nice. And Insidious Roots, shockingly, in the Golgari Roots Archetype, is going to get in to this package, and this is going to be our Insidious Roots effects. Shockingly, Insidious Roots is an Insidious Root effect. I love that for us. So the next one we want to talk about, this is one that came up recently and kind of why I've been talking about this archetype quite a bit and why me and James talked about it quite a bit on the podcast, is Tevil the Balance Scale. So this is another Insidious Roots. So Tevil the Balance Scale is 1 black, green and a blue for a 4/4 legendary creature spirit dragon with flying, and when it attacks, mill 3 cards. Then you may return a land card from your graveyard to battlefield tapped. When one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 black zombie druid creature token. So this is like Insidious Roots that we had before. Whenever one or more So an important difference is Insidious. So there isn't an important difference here. Insidious Roots and some of the other ones are whenever a creature leaves your graveyard. This is kind of going in the more like this. It kind of fits into like the spider spawning-y number of creature cards in decks. Most graveyard decks do care about number of creatures. That is something to keep in mind. Why Tevil is very good is that it's whenever one or more cards. So why Tevil is kind of a bit messed up, and I know we've called the archetype Golgari Roots, and this is a Sultai card. It doesn't matter. You will find a way to splash for this card because effectively, so 1/1. Just think about this card for a sec. 4 mana, 4/4 flyer. Yes, it's in Sultai. Okay, but we're still on rate there. When it attacks, you mill 3 cards and return a land from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So it's ramping you. It's also making you a 2/2. It's a 4 mana 4/4 flyer that when it attacks, you beef up your graveyard, you ramp, and you make a 2/2 black zombie druid. And you make a 2/2 black zombie that's not tapped. Yes, it's not tapped and attacking, but that's still pretty good. It's one of my favourite cards from the set. This is the commander precon. This is one of the face commanders from a precon. We've got a bunch of cards from the set from this particular deck. And it is also something that kind of like Simic is doing in this set as well. So the base of this deck is going to be Golgari, but there are cards with blue pips. There's a white card we're going to be talking about. They're kind of like also kind of are worth considering if you're wanting this archetype to exist in Cube. Also, partly we are just building this commander deck as well. So if you're more of a commander player and you just like these streams, thank you for being here. But we are kind of also just building this deck in a more roundabout way. But Tevil is a very broken card, and the fact that this also works with land synergies is very, very strong. Do keep in mind, so do keep an eye out for how it says whenever one or more cards or whenever one or more creatures. That will play into kind of like the tier list, as it were. We are sort of tiering these. I think Tevil's probably the second best of these now, because Insidious Roots, very strong, very cool archetype, very, very cool card. When this kind of gets when this gets going, when it's snowballing, like I saw James do this yesterday, and like just the chain is massive. Like you basically end up with a curve of powerful beat, because each plant makes the next one bigger. So you started with an 0-1, went up to like a 7-8, and you had everything in between. That's a very scary thing. This really does build you a lot of value, and also they are ramping you as well. One thing as well, which we'll get to when we're going to get into some of the enablers, is that most of these will be whenever one or more, which is fine, because what we're kind of looking for is lots of incidental ways, lots of individual ways of moving cards between zones. So it's not like Living Death isn't so good with this. Something like Torch Resistance is great, because it's lots of individual moving cards. That's what we're going to be talking about today. So Tevil is phenomenal, because it does everything, and is also it's not a do-nothing enchantment. This will still kill an opponent if left unchecked. The Tevil is great. Don't worry about the mana requirements. The next ones I'm going to talk about. This is one I have in my Treat Yourself cube. Literally, the Sultai archetype is this whole thing. Put a bunch of stuff in your graveyard, then move them around zones and profit. So this is not just an archetype I'm pulling out of my ass. I played against it yesterday. It's been in, like, the Sultai archetype in this cube is doing it, and it's in my other cube as well. So I have got quite a bit of experience with this archetype. Next one I want to talk about is Skeleton Crew. I think this one is very cool. Skeleton Crew is 3 and a black for a creature skeleton pirate. Each other creature you control that's a skeleton or pirate gets +1/+1. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 black skeleton pirate creature token, and it has 5 and a black. Return this card from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. So I think this is probably the third best of these effects. I think it's Insidious Roots first, because it's just cheap and efficient, and it's kind of the snowbally potential, and the mana and the ramp is fantastic. Same with Tevil, actually. One thing I didn't mention about Tevil is that just hitting your land drops is incredibly important, and Tevil lets you do that. Why Skeleton Crew I think is next best is because, yes, this one only triggers off of creatures, a bit of a downside. Yes, it's a 4 mana 3/3. That's a bit of a downside. But it makes 2/2s the bodies it makes are 2/2s that then become 3/3s. This pumping out 3/3s is very, very strong. Insidious Roots, if you're doing it a couple of times, like once or twice, you get you get 0-1s and 1-2s and 2/3s. But with Insidious Roots, they're if the deck is working, they are very quickly becoming 7-8 power. So they start small, but the end result is you get massive creatures. Tevil, you're only making 2/2s, but it itself is a good body. Skeleton Crew is probably next because it's consistently making 3/3s. Also, the fact that it can bring itself back from the graveyard is nice, because you are a self-mill deck. One of the reasons I beat James yesterday is because he milled his Insidious Roots. Or, actually, no. It was in the worst place. It was in his deck. In game 1 against James yesterday, he didn't... Insidious Roots was in his deck. It wasn't in his graveyard, and it wasn't in his hand, or in play. That's kind of one of the reasons I ended up winning the first game yesterday. So, with Skeleton Crew, you can mill as much as you want, because you know if you just get to 6 mana, you can get your engine piece back. I think Skeleton Crew is next best. That's why we're going to put it in the deck, and that's why... Yeah, we are sort of tiering these. Next up, we have an interesting one. Next up, we have Tormod the Desecrator. 4 mana 4/2 with partner. Don't worry about that. Doesn't matter. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a tapped 2/2 black zombie creature token. So you can kind of see that we are sort of coming down in terms of power level. This one is our first uncommon, which is nice as well. There is a rare version. Cool, I love that for you. But there is a common version. So Insidious Roots and this, if you're doing in Peasant, these are cards you can consider. This is also whenever one or more cards. So if you are going with the more landsy type of thing, then this card will get better. We will when we get to our kind of enablers. There's dedicated enablers for this deck, and there's incidental enablers. This gets more value from an incidental enabler, something because you might throw like a Crucible of Worlds effect in your deck to get some lands back, that kind of stuff, or like a Dread Return, for example, does double duty with this card because it's whenever one or more cards. So that's pretty good. Tormod the Desecrator, it's not kind of top tier. We are definitely going down in power level, but in cube you want more of these effects. You can't just... I don't think Insidious... in like a 360, Insidious Roots, Skeleton Crew, Tevil might be fine, actually. But as you start getting bigger, into 540 and 720 cubes, you want more redundancy. We're going to break the colour wide open now and talk about On Wings of Gold. I really like this card. So this is 3 and a white. Enchantment. Creatures you control that are zombies and or tokens get +1/+1 and have flying. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 white zombie creature token. So the SS is in white. People can make the mana work. This is a card that is worth splashing, but also does have some crossover and utility in cubes. Like if you're already doing something tokeny in your white adjacent colours. This gets in for that because it buffs your tokens and gives them flying. It's not the most efficient version of that, but +1/+1 and flying will kill your opponents. But it has the whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 white zombie creature token. This then makes them 2/2 fly. So you kind of see that I put this slightly under Tormod just because Tormod is in the colours and is an uncommon, so it's more like to get in more cubes. On Wings of Gold, I think you do need if you are doing stuff with tokens, then this is where you can kind of have some nice overlap, have some nice synergy. I think this is a pretty solid card. I've been kind of impressed by this. It's just a nice little bonus version of this effect that is nice. Next up we have one from the same set as Insidious Roots. Chalk Outline. 3 and a green for an enchantment. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 white and blue detective token. Detective creature token, then investigate. So with that you make a clue token. This was just in the set a worse version of Insidious Roots, and that's kind of where this is. This is more for Peasant, if I'm honest with you. I think at this point this is kind of where we stop doing as much. Like I wouldn't put this like this. This is kind of like the line where I have for my own cube. I kind of stopped just before Chalk Outline. But again, if you're going bigger, if you're going like a 720 cube or a more budget 540, because Tevel was like a 5 or a 10 or something like that. These are commander cards; they could be a bit pricier. Or importantly, if you're doing Peasant, this is a perfectly fine backup. If you want this to be an archetype, you need redundancy, and Chalk Outline is a fine card in that. Let's keep going down. We have 2 more to get through. We'll talk about quickly. Defiled Crypt is next. This is an enchantment room. Whenever one or more cards leave your graveyard, create a 2/2 Black Horror enchantment creature token. This ability triggers only once each turn. And Cadaver Lab, whenever you unlock this door, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. So it does kind of fuel itself a bit. So this and Chalk Outline are probably comparable in terms of power level, actually. Chalk Outline is just whenever a creature leaves your graveyard, but it does work multiple times in a turn. Defiled Crypt. If your creature count is a bit low in your deck, this gets better, and it does work with lands. The issue is that it's only once a turn. It is uncommon, it's fair, and I see this more for lower power level and for Peasant, basically. That's kind of where we are with this. But again, it is another Insidious Roots effect, and they are printing more of these, which is nice. We are going back with our last one, Desecrated Tomb. Whenever one or more creature cards leave your graveyard, create a 1/1 black bat creature token with flying. So I put this at the bottom just because the body is a little anemic. Like, it can go in any deck. So if you are doing multicolored stuff, because we have gone through 4 different colors of Magic here, this is a fine card. If this one feels more like Peasant power level, if I'm honest with you. This is one that has only been printed as a rare thus far, but this one could be reprinted as an uncommon at some point in the future, and when it does, I think this one is perfectly fine for the Peasant version. I think just because the bodies are a little bit anemic, that's why I put it last. But again, if you are building this section on more of a budget, I would consider Desecrated Tomb. There's 8 of these effects here. I think in like a 360 you need 3 of them. In a 540 you need 4 to 5 of them. And in a 720, you might go up to 8. You might go up to 8, but probably about between 6 and 8, probably. So these are kind of like our main payoffs for this archetype. Again, just think about the deck. Like, if you've ever played Spider Spawning in a cube before or in a deck before, you kind of know the deck that this is already kind of fitting into, like a self-milli type stuff. Like that stuff is already going to be in your cube. There are other rewards for being in this archetype and being in this deck. The first one is Sir Conrad the Grim. Scourge of commander tables everywhere. 5 mana, 5/4, legendary creature, human knight. Whenever another creature dies or another creature card is put into a graveyard from anywhere out in the battlefield, or a creature card leaves your graveyard, Sir Conrad deals 1 damage to each opponent. It also has 1 black each player mills a card. So this is this bonus little reward that gets really good in this deck. Because effectively what you're doing is it rewards you for just the deck doing its thing. It is rewarding you when you mill, whenever a card is put into the graveyard from anywhere. It is rewarding you when you mill, and it's rewarding you when you bring stuff back. This might not be one for every cube. I have this in my Treat Yourself cube because it is a little bit slower and the mana gets there. But also I have like an Aristocratic Tokens type of deck in there. This is a nice little overlap card if you are doing Aristocratic Tokens in that kind of deck. This is where Sir Conrad gets very good because it's not just a card for this deck. Again, we are cube, we want cards to have overlap. Sir Conrad the Grim being a nice little overlap card into your Aristocrat decks is very nice. We have another card that is more for this deck now, which is Kishla Skimmer. This is going to be a nice little backup. Oh, also, sorry. So Conrad the Grim is uncommon, so there you go, for your peasant cubes. As is Kishla Skimmer. This is another little bonus reward card. This gets better if you have Dredgers. It's a 2 mana, 2/2 fly. Whenever a card leaves your graveyard during your turn, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Solid little value engine. It's also a 2 mana, 2/2 flyer. With this bonus text. If you're in a peasant queue, this is a nice little card to throw in. There will be other ways of triggering this. Like there's a bunch of regrowths in Simic. Having them trigger draw a card is all very nice. It's a nice little bonus reward that you can consider putting in probably to your peasant cube if you are thinking of running this deck. Just an added little draw a card, nice little bit of advantage, a nice little engine. The next one is Dredger's Insight. This is a Roots adjacent card, and it showed like this just randomly showed up in Aether Drift. So it shows they are looking at adding more type of stuff to this archetype. It's 1 blue, 1 green for enchantment. Whenever 1 or more artifacts and/or creature cards leave your graveyard, you gain a life. So very incidental, solid, nice. But it also has the when the enchantment enters, mill 4 cards and you put an artifact, creature, or land card from among those milled cards into your hand. So it's this part here is like the bread and butter that this deck needs. Like, I'm not going to be adding like Satyr Wayfinders to this list. I'm not going to be adding Satyr Wayfinders to this list, but you do need those kind of like those engine pieces. Like if I go to my actual cube where this archetype is in, like you might not see oh there is Satyr Wayfinder. There's also Stitcher Supplier. There are these little self-mill things in here as well. Like, this is a version I'm using that's in blue, but like there is like ways of putting things into the graveyard. There's like discard outlets, that kind of stuff. These are in the deck. Like Aftermath Analyst, it comes in, it mills some cards. Like you need a bit of self-mill. Like a graveyard deck needs things in the graveyard, and this will put them there. And then also it'll just gain you a bit of life. Like it will kind of You need the bottom effect anyway, you might as well get some reward from it as well. Then we have Hogak. I'm just going to be honest, and Hogak is a great reward for this deck. Hogak is a card that people have wanted to work in Cube for, like, since it broke Modern and probably Legacy as well. People have wanted this to work in Cube because it's cool. The issue is that it just doesn't really, it hasn't got there because the graveyard decks were just putting stuff into their graveyard. They weren't really building a board state. Whereas now, we have Insidious Roots. These can pay for the Convoke cost. We're also going to have a full graveyard. It's also a threat. It's also a win con that we can mill into our graveyard and just naturally get back later. Like, we don't need that many tokens to get a Hogak back. Very, very strong. Very, very cool card. Also, the Delve, incidentally, will also trigger all of these effects. If we're getting rid of a creature, like, Delve is incidental. Like, if we get rid of 5 creatures, we will only make 1 token with, I think, all of these. But that's still a token on top of us just randomly making a Hogak. That's very strong. That's very good. So those are kind of like other rewards that you can consider. So like in my cubes, for full transparency, in my 540, this cube, I think I have Hogak and I have Sir Conrad. But Kishla Skimmer and Dredger's Insight are on commons if you wanted to run them in your peasant environment. So we have our Insidious Roots effects, and we have some bonus rewards for being in this deck. Let's look at some dedicated enablers next. So these are cards. So I'm not counting Stitcher's Supplier as a dedicated enabler. This is a card that needs to be in the deck to just make it work. Stitcher's Supplier goes in any graveyardy deck. It's a card you would consider. Same with Satyr Wayfinder. It is a general graveyard card. Okay? It's not something that you're running specifically for this deck. A card that works specifically fantastically in this deck is Torch Resistance. This card is a card that's shot up massively in the last 5 years, purely because of Torch Resistance, purely because of Insidious Roots and this deck. Fortunately, there was a bad Pauper deck about a decade ago with this card in it, so I have a playset. Hooray! Woo! But Torch Resistance fucks. I'm going to be honest with you. Torch Resistance is a single black for an enchantment. Pay a black, choose and discard a creature card, return target creature card from your graveyard to your hand. Why that is incredibly powerful is that each time you move something around, that is one trigger. What I was saying about Hogak and Delve, if you delve 5 things away, you only ever get 1 Roots plant, or you only ever get 1 on Wings of Gold, because it's all whenever 1 or more. Torch Existence is fantastic in this deck because it is repeatable. For 1 black mana, you can move tokens around zones. You can move creatures around zones. And for each time you move a creature from your graveyard to your hand and back again, for each time you do that one little interaction, each time you play black, you are making one of these tokens. Why Torch Resistance and Insidious Roots specifically is insanely broken is the top line of text of creature tokens you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. That hasn't really come up with most of our other cards that we talked about. It's not really something that we've talked about as much so far, but when you're combining it with Torch Resistance, it is incredibly messed up. It is incredibly good because your tokens are now fueling your engine as well, and basically you just keep making them really big until you get to the point where it's now my biggest one is a 2020, screw it, now I will finally attack with it, that kind of thing. If you have ways of giving your tokens haste, like anger, something like that, then you are really cooking with gas. Torch Resistance is an incredible magic card in this deck. It's also only 1 mana. The biggest downside is that it's an enchantment, so if it gets milled, it's harder to bring back. But that's why you probably still run things like Eternal Witness. Do I have Eternal Witness? I don't. I think I might have Timeless Witness in my cube. But other ways of bringing stuff back is important. But Torch Resistance is a phenomenal magic card in this deck. I would go so far as say that you can't... I don't think you can... If just on power level, I don't think you can run a deck like this without running Torch Resistance. We were actually having the conversation yesterday of full Fire Truck's Blue Nothing cube, because the goal of it is to kind of durdle. There is a world where Torch Existence is too strong with Insidious Roots for that cube. From a power level point of view, if this archetype is randomly too strong in your cube because of the environment you're building, the cut, I think, is Torch Existence. This is what really pushes it over the edge to make it a really messed up strategy. Let's talk about some other dedicated enablers. And these, also Torch Resistance is a common, so it can go in any power level of this cube. Let's talk about some dredges next. Dredges are also really fun with this. I think I might be a bit higher on this than everyone else, but I think if you're doing this, run some dredges, because these are great cards that can go into your graveyard and then return themselves to your hand with the dredge ability, because it's also then fueling your graveyard. Torch Resistance and dredges are phenomenal. These are definitely dedicated enablers. You're not going to run I'm going quite deep on the Insidious Roots archetype. This is entirely what I want Sultai in my Treat Yourself cube to be doing. So I've really gone ham on the dredges. If you wanted to do this, I don't necessarily think you need to, as long as you are still running the self-mill cards, like the Satyr Wayfinders that we mentioned. As long as you still have ways of filling up your graveyard, you might not need the dredgers. But it's worth mentioning that, yes, Golgari Grave Troll and Life from the Loam. Life from the Loam are both rares. The rest of them, there is a deep swathe of uncommons and commons. Stinkweed Imp, Stinkers here is a common. So that this is something you can do at Peasant, and it is something cool. Quick question from the chat. In a cube that has a strong graveyard theme, Insidious Roots reanimate death triggers, how many destroy the exile effects do you want to have in the rest of your cube? And then along the same lines, how do you balance indestructible protection, regenerate the destroy, exile from counters, and needed removal? So that's kind of to be honest with you, so like when it comes to dedicated hate, I let the decks do what they want to do. Like, I won't specifically go looking for exile removal, but like it's more kind of, I base that more on what I want the cube to be doing than answering specific archetypes. I don't put like sideboard cards in my cubes. I'd rather push up. I'd rather raise up. Like, if I'm not going to run like Rest in Peace because I have this archetype in a cube, and I'm not going to cut exile effects because I have this in the cube. Kind of the same thing. It's more, if the cube would already be running Path to Exile. If Path to Exile is a card I would run in the cube, I'm not going to cut it because this archetype is in here. Or same with like I'm not going to add Bajuka Bog to this cube, but I'm not going to cut like answers are fine. Dedicated hate pieces are not. So like I do have Insidious Roots in my regular cube. That's more because James won 10 and you get to add a card every 5 you win. But in this cube I have Path to Exile, Swords to Plowshares, because those are good removal spells for the cube anyway. They would still they're in this cube, but like I'm not adding like Bajuka Bog because Bajuka Bog just wouldn't get in this cube anyway, if that makes sense. Like it's when you build a cube, you'll kind of know, like, you will know what kind of interaction you want with it. So like, I don't have Path to Exile and Swords to Plowshares in my Treat Yourself cube, the cube where this is a big archetype. But that's more because in this cube, I'm wanting people to cast like 6 and 7 drops more. So it's more the mana despondency of like swordsing their 6 drop is way too much of a mana swing, if that makes sense. So like my removal in here is more things like Parting Gust or Council of Judgment, that kind of stuff. So like there's still good interaction in here. A bit more of it's multicolored in here, but like I'm not running Path and Swords in here because because they just wouldn't get in the cube. Yes, I can see the Lions. So like Lion Sash and so Lion Sash and what do you call it? So Lion Sash and Scavenging Ooze and Scavenging Ooze are good examples because I have a +1 on counter synergy in my regular cube. Therefore, I would consider running those. I'm not going to Bajuka Bog, probably not, and maybe not Ashiok, just because they're not in an archetype. There's no reason to add them to the cube. So that's more from a balancing point of view. Let's quickly talk about some other enablers, because there is some other cool ones I want to talk about. So Shigeki is a very cool card. This is a very nice little engine. Shigeki Jukai Visionary, 1 green, 1/3. It's an enchantment creature, which is important. 1 and a green, tap it. Return to its owner's hand. Reveal the top 4 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them into the battlefield tapped. Put the rest into your graveyard. So this is a nice little self-mill engine that also ramps you. That's very, very good. One thing with dredgers that I've mentioned with Tevel is that it can stop you from hitting your lands when you're dredging and stuff, so being able to hit your land drops is very good. Then also as channel, XX green, discard this card, return X target non-energy cards from your graveyard to your hand. So importantly, Insidious Roots, Torch of Existence, are non-legendary cards you might want to get back to your graveyard. So this is a great little engine that it mills you, and then once you've got the bits into your graveyard, it lets you bring them back. It's not the fastest, but it's a very solid little engine. That is very, very good. This is probably this would be under. You would only really be running this if you are doing this type of deck, I think, because like if it's just the fill up your graveyard deck, you don't need as many regrowths. I think this type of deck needs more regrowths, needs more ways of getting things back from the bin. So those are our dedicated enablers. There are incidental enablers. They're just other things that you're going to be running in your cube that will trigger this type of stuff. So I'm not going to fully list these out. So kind of like the stuff we have in here already, these are more of the cards that you would consider running in your cube to make this archetype work. These are cards you might already be running, like Reanimate, or any like. Take this as the signpost for any other reanimation effect. Like, it doesn't have to reanimate, it could be a 4-mana one, for example. These all trigger your Insidious Roots effects. So these are more kind of like, we're kind of getting into like the overlap, what else is in the cube type of thing. So, Incidental enablers, stuff like reanimation effects. You also have spells with, like, a lot more triggers these type of cards than you might initially think. So something like Flashback. Also, Flashback card someone might actually run in their cube. Deep Analysis. Great magic card. This is how you can kind of tailor your cube. So Deep Analysis, I will admit, might not be on the power level for most cubes anymore. But if you know you're doing this archetype, cut a generic 2-3 mana card draw spell and run Deep Analysis, because the Flashback will trigger all of these effects. This is kind of how you can consider, like, this is how you kind of make these decks work in cube. Just look for cards that kind of overlap into other things. So, like, you don't have to go full on Dream Twist, but like you could go Dread Return as a reanimation effect, because not only does it, not only is it a reanimation spell from the graveyard. Well, that's exactly what it is. It's a reanimation spell from the graveyard that will trigger your Insidious Roots and stuff while it's bringing something on the way back in. So this will actually trigger it twice, because this is going to be leaving your graveyard. So the reason why Flashback triggers, for what it's worth, is because it's going from your graveyard to you're casting it, and then it's going to exile. It is leaving your graveyard. So Dread Return will trigger your stuff. Dread Return will trigger your Roots effects, and then the creature that is bringing back will also trigger your Roots effects, as an example. We've mentioned Delve spells. Delve also triggers this because cards are leaving your graveyard. So let's just put Gurmag Angler in as an example. You don't have to run Gurmag Angler, but it's just an example of incidental cards that might be in your cube already. Yes, so Gurmag Angler might be one for this deck, but cards like Treasure Cruise is just a good magic card. It's also a common. These just might get into the cube that this deck that is kind of in this environment already. Actually, Treasure Cruise is probably a better example of an incidental version than this big fish. We also mentioned Crucible effects. So, Crucible of Worlds. There are other ones. Actually, I need to do the tier list for this at some point. We started it on the podcast recently. If you like Cube, do check out Powerful Nothing. I'll put it's on this channel, the video versions. I'm biased. I think it's great. But like Crucible effects, you may play lands from your graveyard. That's kind of the effect you're after. I think this is the best of the Crucible effects personally. Forgotten Cellar, because you have the ability to do a Yawgmoth's Will as well. It's very vibey. This doesn't work with all of them, but it isn't. But like cubes might already have Crucible effects because they might be doing like a lands deck. They might be doing some fast spawn stuff if you're slightly higher power leveled, or slightly more higher power level. But like this works with the ones that say whenever one or more cards. So Torment the Desecrator, Tevel, that might be, and Defiled Crypt. These ones work better with these, with like Treasure Cruise and with. These give you more variety, basically, more options. With these, you have to be removing creatures. So with Treasure Cruise, you have to be removing a creature. Same with Deep Analysis, actually. I should have clocked that. Deep Analysis won't trigger Insidious Roots, but it will trigger Torment the Desecrator. Because it says any card. It's just something to keep in mind when you're doing this. Incidental enablers. But the creature version of Flashback is Unearth. These will work with all of your effects because it's either everything or creatures. There isn't, as far as I'm aware, there probably are lands and instant and sorcery ones, but we're not actually looking at those because they don't work in the deck. But like here's a Crucible effect that also has Unearth. That's pretty good. That's a really good one. Phyrexian Dragon Agent probably goes in every deck, but I love me a Scorpeth Lord. Scorpeth Lord also fucks. This is an incidental enabler. Just it having Unearth means that you can trigger all your stuff once. So yeah, Deep Analysis only works with Tormod and the ones that do anything. Unearth will work with all of them. Very nice. The other thing we need to talk about, and is this incidental enablers or is this a dedicated enabler? We might need to have this conversation. Squee, Goblin Nabob. 2 and a red, 1/1. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return Squee from your graveyard to your hand. These are just really good if you have other ways of discarding them. We'll put Squee in. We'll call it incidental enablers. Maybe I'm more someone, or maybe me and Fire Truck are more people who will just randomly add these to cube because we think they're cool. But same with Master of Death. These are cards that you can add. Maybe they are dedicated enablers, but effectively these are cards that you can pitch them and then they return to your hand at the beginning of your upkeep. When they are returning themselves to your hand, that is when you will trigger all of these effects, which is very good and what we're after. Maybe they are dedicated. Maybe there is a world where you're probably not running Squee unless you are running Dredgers, but I think it's cool anyway. So let's talk about some overlap now. So this is kind of like the bulk. So we have here the Insidious Roots effects. These are the cards you kind of need to run. The rest, so we kind of went over numbers for these earlier. So like 3 to 4 in a 360 cube, 4 to 5 in a 540 cube, and then 5 to 8 in a 540 cube. I will write this up as well. For dedicated enablers, what's my gut here? Probably 2 to 3 in a 360 cube, 3 to 4 in a 540 cube, and 5 to 8 in a 720 cube. Again, this is dedicated. I'm not including like Stitcher Supplier, General, Self-Mill here. In terms of other rewards, you can run what you like. If it overlaps with something else, then run them. Or if you want to give the deck a dedicated win con, then run a Hogak. And incidental enablers, these are cards that you're probably not adding to your cube. These are all probably already here. That's why they are incidental, because they might already be here. Maybe we'll move Squee and Master Death over. But these are cool cards that do things in other archetypes. Like the thing they were doing, the other potential they were doing in Fire Truck's cube is Forbid. 3 mana, discard 2 cards, counter target spell. Pretty hot with Squee and Master of Death. You always have things to discard, and probably decent in this deck if you can make the mana work. So this is kind of like the bulk of the archetype. As I said, yeah, I will try and put this into a Cube Cobra package a little bit later on, so you should be able to just add it. Just click and add to your cube. If I'm able to do that, links to that will be in the description below as well. Let's talk about some overlap. So obviously, this is kind of, to an extent, this isn't a package. This is what your Golgari section is doing. Like if I go to my Treat Yourself cube, this is what my Sultai, but primarily Golgari section is doing. In terms of overlap, there are kind of archetypes it can overlap with quite well, but effectively it is parasitic to an extent because not as many other archetypes care about the graveyard as much. Like, not as many archetypes are going to get as much out of an Aftermath Analyst. Decks do like Stitcher Supplier. Like, there are plenty of spells decks. Like, there is like a spells version of this as well. What's the... let's see if I got it in here. Like, Kess. Like, there is like you can do like a spellsy version of this. There is like, yeah, there is Reanimator spells with like Kess, Distant Mage, that lets you cast a spell from your graveyard every turn. And where is it? It's a big sorcery. Just had it. Mystic's Mastery. This is like a big Reanimator spells deck. That is an overlap because you are doing the self-mill. It's just instead of creatures, you're putting in things like Dream Halls and like extra turn spells, or big spells like Inspired Ultimatums. Ultimatums are sick. If you can play them in cube, please do. These are great. So there is some overlap there. Like Reanimator in Dimir, that's going to have some self-mill. That's going to have some discard. If you're doing Reanimator, that overlaps really nicely because it can take like effectively it can kind of pinch whatever it wants from that archetype. It might also keep it in check, which is nice. Like, it can reanimate one of your big top ends as well. Perfectly fine. Like Jund Delirium is another one that overlaps quite nicely. That's not in this one. That's in my regular cube. Like the Jund Delirium, basically trying to make Pyrogoyf the best card in Magic. That kind of deck. That's been pretty good. Like the Stealth Mill, Barogoyf, like in that archetype, just Insidious is solid in that. Like, it's solid as an overlap piece because it's an enchantment. So just having another enchantment that can go in your deck, like in that deck, you're less built around Insidious Roots. It's more, it might take an Insidious Roots because it's an enchantment that makes your Tarmogoyf one bigger. But if you get it in play, it's going to do you a bunch of value as you kind of start moving things around zones and stuff. And that's kind of what really this archetype kind of is. It's more like, this really rewards you for building an engine and doing a thing, and that's why I think it's really cool. That's why for me it's been more fun than like Spider Spawning is still a cool deck, but it's definitely been power crept. Like, I don't, be honest with me, I don't think this is good enough for Peasant Cube anymore. It's fun and I want to do it, and it's something that it's something if I see I would be like, ooh, I love that. But just from a power point of view, 5 mana, make 1/2s with reach. Is that good anymore? Like, Insidious Roots feels like the 2025 version of this card, and it's also like, this is kind of like the you do the thing and then you get a board state. Insidious Roots, it is an engine piece, and you're doing your cool thing for longer, and that's why I like it. So I've been really impressed by this archetype. Any cube I see it in, the person doing it is having a good time. Yeah, I love this archetype. I think it's sick. That's probably where we're going to end it for today. We are on time. Love that for us. Yes, as I mentioned, links to my Treat Yourself cube, where this is a bigger type, will be in. Links to my unpowered cube, where there's a touch of this is in. I'll put in this row. I'll also put a link to Josh's to Firetruck's Blue Nothing Do Nothing cube as well, where he has it as the Golgari thing in there. 3 different cubes, 3 different ways of using this archetype. Yeah, if 3 very different cubes with 3 very different power levels can get a lot of use out of this, I think you can as well. So thank you all very much for watching. Let me know what's your favourite Insidious Roots effect? Is it still Roots? Is it Tevil now? Ooh, has Tevil stolen the crown? And are there any other cards that you think we've missed? Like if you've run or seen this yourself, what other dedicated enablers would you consider running? I think for me these are pretty solid options, but I know there's more out there. Like, for what it's worth, we have the Undertaker in my Treat Yourself one because it's a discard outlet. So discard outlets are also very good. Like, yeah, maybe we are pack ratting as we bring stuff into the bin. There's also like there's a ton more incidental ways where this works, like Timeless Witness, like Eternalize, also things leaving your graveyard. Where is it? I might have cut it. Where's my boy Vengevine? The Vengabus also triggers this. Do Root Wallers? I must have cut the Root Wallers. I'm guessing they don't. If you discard this card into exile... Discard it. Okay. So unfortunately... Madness does not work, but there's still a bunch of other cool stuff that does. We need to end it. I need to start the day job. Thank you all very much for being here. We'll catch you all tomorrow. We'll be back. Yeah. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll catch you all tomorrow. Goodbye.